If you're a church planter or revitalizer, you know the weight of the calling. You're preaching, shepherding, counseling, discipling, and somehow you're also expected to build a website, manage social media, create a brand, do SEO, and connect with visitors. It's a lot, and you weren't called to ministry to spend your life behind a laptop. At Garden City Media, we understand. We've walked the church planting journey ourselves. That's why our mission is to empower pastors with digital marketing services and consulting, so you can grow your church without burning out. Whether you need a new website, help building your brand, support with communication systems, or a long-term digital strategy, we're here to partner with you in every stage of planting and revitalization. Explore what we can offer at GardenCityMedia.com. Let us help you cultivate a healthy, vibrant church community so you can focus on what matters most, loving and discipling your people. From seed to blessing, from tabernacle to temple, from the altar to the city, this is Garden City Media. Visit GardenCityMedia.com.
Well, it's good to be with everybody back on the Everyday Monks podcast, the parish podcast of St. Benedict's Anglican Church in Rockwall, Texas, Reformed Episcopal. And sitting here at the podcast desk, and I'm happy to be joined by the usual monks. To my right, I have the Reverend Mark Toombs, church planting curate here at St. Benedict's. Father Toombs, good to be with you.
Good to see you guys today.
How are you today?
Doing very well, thank you.
Good. What did you have for lunch today?
Tio Mon, Guiso Verde.
Yes, the Tio Mon. The unofficial Mexican restaurant. Of the Everyday
it
Monks.
is.
And the unofficial sponsor of this podcast.
That's right.
They fuel us in their own way.
They do.
And as you've already heard come in, the Reverend Michael Keith Templin, directly across from me. Father Templin, it's always good to see you.
It is. It is always good to see me.
Okay. Well, that tone of humility is perfect for today's feast day, so thank you for that. And a little bit of good news, a little bit of maybe sad news, but we want to take a moment of silence for the Reverend Deacon Timothy Wilson, who's not with us today.
Paul in.
So, and no, he has not passed and gone on to heaven. He's been out of town and enjoying time with his family back in Georgia. So we miss the deacon. We're wishing him safe travels as he comes back to Texas. But we are happy to have a good friend of ours and maybe a voice you've heard if you listen to the podcast. But we have with us John McLean today from the Cathedral Church of the Holy Communion. John McLean, how are you?
I'm very well and delighted to be appearing on what I think is one of the finest podcasts on the interwebs today.
Now,
thank
flattery,
you.
Flattery
Wow.
will get you everywhere, John. Flattery will get you everywhere.
Great to be with you guys.
John, it's great. And thanks for being willing to, come in a pinch. We couldn't think of anybody better to have. And I hope you enjoyed your lunch. Did you like it?
I did.
Okay.
I've heard you talk about it, and it lived up. Great tacos.
You got the barbacoa plate.
I did.
Yeah.
I love the little street taco thing, and they were terrific.
They
2
look
lime
great.
wedges, by the way, without having to ask,
Oh, yeah.
which is wonderful. So this is a great way to spend a half day out here at St. Benedict's.
And if you haven't picked up already, so John is the wonderful and deep and rich voice that does our corporate sponsorship spots. And so I'm tempted to have you just talk the entire time.
I know.
Same.
That
And
rich, smoky voice.
Based on the depth of my theological and spiritual understanding of the conversion of St. Paul, that may happen. But
We could roll our socks down and maybe get to that.
no.
Nice deep timbre.
Before we jump into anything, so John, maybe just a little bit about yourself. Don't go on for more than at least 20 minutes, but just introduce yourself to the folks, if
The
you will.
pressure. Yeah. My name is John. I'm a big fan of the Everyday Monks. And as Father Vincent said, I am a member over at Church of the Holy Communion Cathedral, and I'm a postulant for Holy Orders. In fact, Deacon Timothy and I have had many classes together over at Cranmer House.
Yep.
I can assure you, as you know, if you listen to the program, he's brilliant. Just a very well-read and gentle servant. Really, really great guy.
Yeah.
So I'm honored to be sitting in his spot. And I'm seeking to become a deacon, Lord willing, later this year. Working through at Cranmer House, and also dabble in podcasting. I was on the radio for many, many years here in town, so this is kind of like coming home. But I mean when I say, and I'm not sucking up because I'm already here. I don't have to. I love this program. What you guys offer is so unique and so cool, and it's great to be with you today. So I hope I can contribute in some way to today's discussion.
Keep talking it out. We haven't filled out the check yet, so just that amount's going higher and higher the more.
John and I used to run around in the same circles and didn't know it.
We did. We found that out by happenstance.
Do tell. What is the circle?
So I went to Criswell,
right.
Worked at Criswell, and John worked for Criswell Broadcasting.
Yeah,
really?
I spent many years at KCBI, which was the
oh my gosh,
wow.
Yeah, I was there. I did just about every job there except for general manager. Over the years, ended up doing morning drive for a long time, and so we know a lot of the same folks. And down there at Criswell.
It is.
Yeah. Good times. It was a wonderful time to do Christian radio, and not something I sought to do. It was God's providence. When I came to Dallas, I was, looking for country western, all the stations I'd done, and I wound up landing at a nonprofit Christian radio station.
Wow.
I thought, why am I here? I don't know the first thing about it. Well, now I know why I was there.
Yeah.
But so great stuff. We have that connection.
It's amazing.
So, good stuff.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, we could just wrap it up right there.
Yeah. So cue the music and.
Well, we're going to get into cigar talk as we've started in this new calendar year. But this is kind of off script. Not that there is one, but have you noticed there's just been a ton. I know there's always a lot going on in the world, but it just seems like the last couple of weeks, there's just been huge headlines. I mean, we've got Venezuela, we have Iran and all this going on there. We've got rioting, in Minneapolis. But the thing the big headline for me, and I don't understand this, so I'm hoping we can flesh this out a little bit, is the McRib lawsuit. I don't I don't understand this. What is Michael?
This has been an interesting one for me. I've followed the McRib closely over the years, and I've had quite a few.
Yeah, I've never had a McRib.
He's a McRib scholar.
I am.
I know that.
I was telling you guys at lunch when the Flintstones movie came out in the early '90s. Man, they were promoting the McRib really big, and that was my first one, and I've been hooked ever since.
But what is the big deal? I keep seeing headlines
there's no
social
rib
media.
There's no rib meat. And
why is that a surprise to anybody? So they're upset about that?
Yeah, and I had this thought, when I was driving over, like, well, wait till they find out that the quarter pounder doesn't have any quarters in it,
Right.
Okay.
And not much meat either.
Right. But my real question, and we're going to quickly move on. But this is a real thing. I keep thinking it's like a joke on social media. Is there really a lawsuit going on over the McRib?
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fun fact, the McRib, since pork is kind of the national treasure of Germany, you can get one year round, or at least you used to could.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And a McBeer.
And a McBeer, yeah.
Absolutely.
No kidding.
So get your pork sandwich and your beer. And
that's right.
Wow.
That is true.
All right. Well, that clears it up for me because it's been bothering me. And I felt like there was a cultural phenomenon going on that I didn't know anything about. Kind of like Taylor Swift. I don't know anything about her. And the McRib is in the same category. So I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, it's a fine sandwich.
So we received last podcast, we made kind of a soft plea to our listening audience that we would gladly receive any cigars that you might want to purchase and send to the Everyday Monks for Cigar Talk. And lo and behold, I came into my office last week and there were some cigars on my desk with a card. And it reads, "To Everyday Monks, thank you for your fantastic podcast. Since you love your cigars from En Fuego," and that is En Fuego in Rockwall, owned by the Moors down there in the harbor, "I asked Lee, who is the proprietor, the owner, to pick up some nice favorites for you. Love the podcast, information, inspiring, encouraging, and uplifting. And that is from Becky Elliston.
Thank you, Becky.
Isn't that
really
sweet?
sweet.
We love Becky.
Yes.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
So before we start talking about this wonderful cigar she picked, I want to say thank you, Becky, for your encouragement, for your friendship, and all that you do here in the parish. And she picked out for us, and we're all smoking the same cigars, so we can make a few comments about them, but we're all smoking the LFD Cabinet number 5 Maduro, which is probably my go-to. Wouldn't you say, Michael? My
It
go-to,
is. I've seen you smoke more of these than any other cigar.
Maybe more than the McRibs you've had.
Probably.
Possibly. So I just want to say on the front end, then I'll go to Father Toombs. I think you're new to this, right? This is a new cigar for you?
Oh, yeah, totally new.
So classic Maduro. There's no band on it. Very simple, stated. A kind of an oily wrapper.
It is.
It's about a 36 ring gauge, a nice dark rich wrapper. I think it's a Mexican wrapper. It's Nicaraguan filler. It smokes great. The construction's great. You are not going to go wrong if you're a Maduro fan with the Cabinet number 5. And I would just say, as a side note, any LFD, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So any LFD.
Cabinet number 1.
Or
chapter
number one, chapter
that's a good
2,
one. Yeah.
Lenox, Obscura, all of them.
They're all good.
So, Father Toombs, what are your first impressions?
Well, I was going to say all the things you just said, but
we'll add something to that.
it doesn't compare at all to the Black and Milds that I usually try. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding about
Middletons.
So what do you
No, it
Dutch
is.
masters.
It is very smooth. I was a little intimidated at first because of some comments made by Father Templin, but so far that has not held true. I mean, it's wonderful. Nice room note. Very easy to enjoy.
Yeah, it's a nice draw.
Yeah.
Yeah, not overwhelming.
Great.
Father Templin, a few words on it.
I mean, when you think of a Maduro, this is probably the cigar you think of, right?
Right. That's the way I think of it.
Yeah. You got your strong kind of espresso note, but Maduro's aged. And so it is a more assertive cigar, but it's also really kind of toned down at the same time.
Yeah,
I don't know how to describe that, but
it seems like it's going to be more than it is.
Right.
In the way that you don't want it to be, but it's not.
It's not trying too hard, right?
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There, and that's good. I like that. Okay, John, anything from you on this?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I noticed was the physical feel of it. It's very silky. That's the oil and the.
Yep.
And I'm a big construction. Nothing's more discouraging than getting a cigar and being excited and it's not built right.
Right.
And so it doesn't smoke straight and it comes apart. It's got soft
It's the
spots and
worst.
hot spots.
Yep.
This one feels like there was careful attention was paid. And I think that's the mark of a good handmade cigar. And so I appreciate that in terms of the flavor. And I also I'm kind of a middle, not a real strong cigar kind of guy. So I too was a little like, ooh, can I handle it?
Yeah.
It's actually very nice. It's very accessible.
So it's like a lot of people, they get new to cigars. They assume that because the light wrapper Connecticut, they think it's going to be light.
Right.
They look at a Maduro that could be, almost pitch black, and they're like, oh, that's got to be overwhelming. And you'd be surprised.
Yep.
Right. Well, and I think it's the same like with coffee. The lighter the wrapper, the higher the nicotine.
That's
but
right.
The darker the wrapper, I mean, it's not going to hit you as hard either.
right.
So.
It's very nice. Thank you, Becky.
Yeah, thank you, Becky.
Yeah,
and
wonderful.
So we do commend this cigar to you, cigar smokers, or the new cigar smokers out there. You're not going to go wrong. And amazingly, the quality of the cigar, the price point will surprise you at how reasonably it's priced for what you get. So anyway, we want to thank our good friends at Enfuego for helping Becky pick out something that she knew that I would love. So thank you, Lee, Mark, everybody over there. You guys are great. All right, so we've been looking at the feast days from the 1928 prayer book. We've been doing this for the past several months, and we're continuing that today with the feast that's called the Conversion of St. Paul, which is celebrated on the 25th of January. And if you want to look in your prayer book, the propers for this feast day begin on page 229. And I just want to make we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but I was saying that, we're coming off all the Christological feast days. Of course, the Christological feast days are drawing us into the salvific story, the narrative of Christ and salvation through the major markers of his life, birth and circumcision, baptism, etc., all those sorts of things. But then throughout the whole liturgical year, the church also commemorates the apostles. So there's feast days for the apostles. Of course, we've talked about on the Feast of St. Michael. I think St. Michael's the only non-human, I guess, or non-person feast, right, as an angel. But the conversion of St. Paul, it's interesting because most of the apostolic feasts tie in some way that feast day to their martyrdom. As we know, pretty much all the apostles were martyred. But this feast day doesn't really draw us into the orbit of Paul's martyrdom. It's drawing us into something else. Do you have anything just historically, liturgically, Michael, on maybe this feast? Or anything you might want to just help people out with?
So Blunt mentions that this collect is found in the sacramentary of St. Gregory the Great.
Okay, so that's putting it back quite a ways.
But there's no feast. So there, at least from my understanding of the reading, that the actual feast day itself didn't really come around until the 13th century.
Okay.
So in regard to, prayer book feast, this is a fairly recent one.
Right. So is this a Western? Is this Orient in the West, or is it universal at first?
Yeah, I don't know that the East celebrate this at all. They might, but I don't think they have a feast in January or anything like that. The ancient feast day for St. Paul is connected with St. Peter,
which we also celebrate.
Yes, and the 1662 prayer book, it separates, and it probably happened before that in the earlier editions, but the feasts of St. Peter and Paul, we end up with just St. Peter being commemorated in June without Paul.
Right.
It's probably to not duplicate the same guy, several times, because they wanted to simplify the calendar.
Right. But this, you're saying, but the conversion of St. Paul, so the emphasis of the church celebrating the conversion, I mean, we're kind of dating that back to about the 13th century.
Yes, at least as a proper feast,
right?
But like I mentioned, the collect is in the old propers, but there's not an epistle and gospel, that went with it.
Yeah. Okay. So,
and I think there's probably an intention, but we can get into this later of why it's in January.
Yeah, I do want to. Well, let's just talk about that now.
Sure.
Because a lot of people don't understand, or maybe they just don't know. The dates are not random, right?
No, I'm not. I don't know that this was associated with relics, and it's definitely not associated with constructing a church on the spot, in the 13th century or something like that. But I think it's associated with the season of Epiphany.
See, now that makes, and why would that make sense?
Because as it's one of the biggest epiphanies in the New Testament, Jesus himself comes and speaks to St. Paul.
Right. And St. Paul is sent to the Gentiles.
To the Gentiles.
That's what I was
It's really, right? So, John, I mean, the focus of the Epiphany is the Magi, the Gentiles coming to the Christ, right?
Precisely.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's in fact, that's why I always assumed it was in January. It's an Epiphany feast.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes total sense. I mean, now the light is for everyone.
Right.
So we're all in the covenant now. We have the opportunity to come to Christ.
What do you think about that, Father Timms?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. I mean, he's apostle to the Gentiles, so it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. To tie the conversion of Paul and then the outflowing of the gospel to the nations, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And now we could go on and on and on about, well, let's talk about Paul. I mean, gosh, everybody's talked about Paul. So I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I mean, we all kind of know, I think, the basic story of Paul's conversion, et cetera, and we'll get into it in the gospel. So what I want to do is do what we always do. I want to go through the collect, the epistle, and the gospel, and, we'll try and make some observations and just have a conversation about them. But I do think it's important that the people, when you're reading this, the emphasis is on the conversion of St. Paul. I mean, that's the name of the feast. So I think that's telling us something right off the bat. So, Father Timms, how about if you read the collect for us on page 229?
O God, who through the preaching of the blessed apostle St. Paul hast caused the light of the gospel to shine throughout the world, grant, we beseech thee, that we, having his wonderful conversion in remembrance, may show forth our thankfulness unto thee for the same, by following the holy doctrine which he taught, through Jesus Christ our Lord, Amen.
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 Amen. So, as we've said many times, the collects always follow a basic, simple pattern of invoking God, of saying something about God, and then invoking Him for supplication, asking that God would do something for His people, and then a thanksgiving for God. That pretty much is a structure. So, Father Templin, just looking at that in light of the feast and what it's wanting us to think about, what are some of the things that jump out to you right off the bat?
Well, I'm going to take the easy one right off the bat.
Okay, please do.
But
Wait, don't you want to leave that for the postulant?
Well, he's got to do the heavy lifting.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah, there's hazing. that
He's
happens,
doing
right?
seminary.
That's
so-
right.
He knows everything.
I've got to be. Yeah, there's hazing. I get it. I'm prepared. I have notes.
Thank goodness.
So, yeah.
But right off the bat, in that first line, through the preaching of the blessed apostle Saint Paul, there is this emphasis, and Paul will say it himself many times in his epistles that he's been appointed to preach the gospel, right?
Yeah.
And he has this ministry of proclamation that is probably the most profound outside of Jesus, and in all of church history. I mean, his missionary work converted the Gentile world essentially.
Yeah. I mean, you bring up a really interesting point. I mean, in one sense, he is kind of the first gospel preacher in, post Jesus,
Right.
Would you?
Yeah.
And I think that's why, and I don't want to get into this, but, in Christianity, the big Christianity, there are the camps within Protestantism and evangelicalism where they're going to go, we're Paul guys. And you see this in traditions where they're very heavy on Paul.
Yeah. Reform people love the Apostle Paul.
Well, that's why I brought it up, because, you kind of come out of that ilk. But then you'll see other people and they'll kind of shy away from Peter because they are assuming that he's Roman. It's just a weird thing.
Yeah.
But we do that. We do
the
these sorts of
mystical
things.
people like John, for example.
But what are your thoughts on all that and the collect?
Well, I'm with Father Templin on this. I think to come out of the gates talking about the preaching of the Apostle Paul is striking. And especially knowing that this is a man that endured suffering and hardships. He could also perform miracles and signs and those kinds of things. But to center on his preaching, it's because throughout the book of Acts, that's what we see him do. Yeah. Among Gentiles, among Jews, in the marketplace, in synagogues, it's preaching. He's preaching Christ all the time.
Right. And
before kings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how shall they hear without a preacher? Right. So it in our time, and John, I want to ask you what your thoughts are, but I wanted to just this idea. I don't know how often we just think of preaching as God's great gift of grace and proclamation and salvation. We typically think of preaching, and the first thing we want to do is start critiquing it.
Right.
And we look at it as a product. But the collect is immediately taking us to the goodness of God in the gift of giving Paul the ministry to proclaim the gospel. And in spite of all of his inadequacies and all those things that any person has, but it immediately brings us to a thanksgiving for the preached gospel.
Right.
Yeah. So, John, what are some of your thoughts?
Well, I think, from the heart of pastors, as you gentlemen are, you understand that, because when you prepare a sermon or a homily and you preach it, you feel that gift. You've been called to do this, and you feel the blessing you receive by being that preacher. And you're like Romans 10, how will they hear? How are they going to hear this good news? And Paul got that. And God gave him the gift to go out and, like Father Templin said, preach before kings. And we read about he had this preaching center and all the planting that he did.
Right.
He understood that this preaching is not just a thing you do. It is the ministry, and it is because the rubber meets the road with the gospel.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think and I think there's a reason this collect starts off with, who through the preaching of the blessed apostle, the preaching is really, and then everything branched out of that for St. Paul.
Yeah. And notice the word choice. It doesn't say, oh God, who through the apostle St. Paul's preaching.
Right.
It's who through the preaching of the blessed apostle. So it puts the word of God, the logos, preeminent, comes to Paul in the struck down by the Christ, and
Yep.
then that word is embedded in him in baptism and belief, and it is that which is implanted in him that then comes out of the man, God using him. And I love this line: the preaching of the blessed gospel that has caused the light of the gospel
Mm-hmm.
to shine throughout the world.
Yes.
Right. That's Epiphany.
And when,
It is.
That's exactly right. And when you think about the weighty office of preaching God's word, I mean, this brings it in focus.
Yeah.
But it also allows us to step back and go, but wait a minute. It's not of me.
Hmm.
God
Yeah.
caused the light of that gospel to shine through that man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that man is not a perfect man. You know
Well,
what I mean? What do you, yeah, go
So
ahead.
again, we see God working through means, and in this case, he's working through a human, a creature, an image bearer,
That's right.
using human voice, human language. And as Paul says in other places, preaching there's a kind of weakness and foolishness to it, to the kerygma, the thing preached. And I love the fact that the collect highlights that this isn't just preaching for preaching's sake. It's preaching the gospel of the light of God in Jesus Christ. There are a lot of people, by the way, who pastors even, who think they're preaching the gospel, they're preaching Christ, but they're just preaching. They're not doing what Paul did.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a difference. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
we just
Good
want to
point.
put a finer point on
Well,
that.
and the cosmic the cosmic scope that, and if you think about this, Paul will also say that when we lift up the element in the Eucharist, when we elevate Christ in the Holy Sacrament, it is a proclamation to the whole world of the gospel and his returning again.
Mhm.
This idea that even the weakest man, empowered by the Spirit, the preached word is somehow, through God's grace and mercy, is shining throughout the world. It's cosmic in scope, just as this liturgy, Eucharist is cosmic in scope.
Mhm.
But Father Tippin, you had something you wanted to say, I think.
Oh, well, what was I going to say? I think, I do remember what I was going to say.
Good.
We often critique ourselves as preachers, and probably rightfully so. But I think this collect probably gives us a good checklist of, did we do a good job or not?
Mm.
And
In what way?
if you can go away from preaching and say that, I caused the light of the gospel to go forth,
That would be great.
It'd be a good
Right.
sermon, right?
That would be wonderful.
I mean, that's the
Absolutely.
exemplar, though, right? I mean,
Right.
that's what you're doing. It's and like you say, it's so easy to critique yourself and that joke didn't land, or I look out and I see glassed over eyes, I'm not being effective, and it takes you out of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're sharing the gospel, and we take it for granted because we hear homilies week after week after week,
Right.
and I think
We're
it's-
overfed in
Yeah,
some respects.
and I think it's easy to take that for granted, and I think that the collect here sets the table right away.
Yeah.
That preaching, how will they hear without a preacher?
Yeah.
That's the job.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So-
great.
Could I add
Great.
something? You made a comment about Paul preaching the cosmic scope of the gospel. I think that needs to be emphasized again and again. Paul was not just preaching, this is how you get saved, or
Right.
this is how you go to heaven.
Right.
He was preaching the cosmic scope of the
Yeah,
gospel,
yeah.
meaning Christ bringing all things together under his headship.
That's his language, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, and you see him talking about the scope of the cosmos when he speaks about the elements, the spiritual elements. I mean,
Mhm.
he has a very full and rich
Yeah.
cosmology, and all of it is God's.
Yeah.
And I think you bring up a good point.
Yeah.
And
so,
redeemable.
yes,
Mm.
thank you. And all of it is redeemable, and all of it will be redeemed.
Yep.
I mean, so after that beautiful sweeping statement about the gospel preached through Paul, we then move to what the church asks God for. Grant, we beseech thee, that we, the church, having his wonderful conversion in remembrance, may show forth our thankfulness unto thee for the same, by following the holy doctrine that he taught. Okay. Now, who wants to jump into that one first?
Well, that's Eucharistic language, isn't it? Show forth our thankfulness. And as you alluded to, when we celebrate Holy Communion, the whole church is proclaiming the gospel, the death of Jesus until he comes. And so we're actually joining in St. Paul's apostolic ministry
Yes.
in some sense.
Yeah.
We preach the word, the church joins us in echoing that proclamation of the gospel in the Eucharist. And it's really beautiful to see all of God's people engaged in this, giving thanks to God for Jesus Christ.
Yeah, which really, I think, draws our attention, because I'm glad you brought this into the liturgy, into the Eucharist, because what is the proper response to the gospel that was preached, that's shown throughout the nations and the world, that changed our hearts? What should we do?
Give thanks.
Yes,
We should give thanks.
Right.
I mean, so what about you? What are your thoughts, John?
Well, I love how it reminds us to remember the wonderful conversion. You know, Saul of Tarsus on his way to persecute,
Right.
aggressively obsessed with chasing down followers of the way. And all of a sudden, here's Christ. Boom, blinding light. And there's that light again that we talk about, that he is now, you're blinded with this light, but you're going to take my light to the world, to the Gentiles. A new thing is happening. And I always think, you know, Saul of Tarsus, now St. Paul, he's starting a new life right in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think when we remember that, it really deepens the things that we read that St. Paul wrote, his epistles and his instruction. It deepens it, because, you know, I always try to walk a mile in the shoes of these people in the scriptures, which is hard to do. But it's pretty easy for me to imagine that I'm going to do something that I think is right. And all of a sudden, God says, this is the moment where I'm turning you 180 degrees.
Yeah.
And so I love how the collect tells us, remember this conversion.
Yeah.
It's an important part of the ministry.
And not only remember his conversion, because in a sense, if it were not for his conversion, we would probably not be converted.
Precisely.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also it should remind us of the conversion that we have had because of what he did, Paul,
That's right.
in
Right.
preaching that gospel.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, there's probably no bigger enemy of the gospel than Saul of Tarsus.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he says as much, and yet when we go back post conversion and look at the life and the teaching of Paul, there becomes no bigger advocate for those outside of the Jewish people of bringing them into the Messiah than through the preaching and ministry of Paul. I mean,
even to the point where he kind of gets into it with Peter.
yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's that important.
I opposed him to his face.
Right. You know, can you imagine that? Good grief.
Someone says the one who's been forgiven much loves much, right?
Yeah. Somebody did say
Somebody did say that.
So what's his name? You know his name?
Jesus.
Yes. So, having his wonderful conversion and remembrance, that we may show forth our thankfulness unto thee for the same. So not only do we give thanks emotionally with our whole hearts, with our voices in Eucharistic worship, but it has to actually be embodied, and it has to be demonstrated by our lives.
Yep.
This by following the holy doctrine that he taught, because you can't think wrongly about God and live right. Thought is directly connected to action. And so it is the holy doctrine that God imparted to Paul and the apostles, by which we are compelled, the guardrails are set, the line is laid on how we are to walk in righteousness and holiness. Would you say that there's some of that in that?
Absolutely. I mean, Paul even tells us, you know, the renewing of your mind. You know, the mind is a very important part of this whole deal. And
Just had that epistle.
yeah, that's right. And it's in here. It's in Epiphany. It's around this feast for a reason. It draws us back into this idea that our minds are important. You know, we are to read and understand. And St. Paul, thanks be to God, teaches us sacramental theology in his writings, teaches us church discipline in his writings, talks about the resurrection of the dead and what that looks like, which, I mean, these are life-changing teachings. And the collect here, you know, follow the holy doctrine that he taught us. It's right there.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know how many times that Paul will say to walk in the light that you've been given. You've been clothed in Christ. Don't walk as children of darkness. Walk as children of light. Over and over and over again. The manifestation of Christ and the gospel and the revelation given is so that people can actually live and be like God.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point spiritually of Epiphany, is that we turn from darkness and we actually live in the light. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you'll allow me, just go back to that word doctrine.
Yeah. Oh, please.
Because we don't see that in every one of our collects, do we?
Actually, I don't know how many there are, but there's not.
I don't know how many either, but just off the top of my head, I can think of two.
Yeah.
One we just talked about a few weeks ago for the Feast of St. John the Evangelist.
That's right.
And now we have St. Paul and the doctrine being brought up again. And when you think about the New Testament and its writers, I mean, all of these guys are gifted, right? Obviously, they're apostles of Jesus Christ. Yeah. But John and Paul, I mean, it's hard to think of two more well-respected theologians, right?
Yeah.
I mean, John's gospel that he gives us in the book of Revelation and his epistles are so loaded and coated with theological doctrine. And then the very same can be said about Paul's writings. Yeah. I mean, even Peter mentions, he's hard to understand.
Right. Right. But he's a bit heady.
But you hear of Johannine scholars and Pauline scholars, but those are kind of their own two departents in New Testament studies.
That's true.
Because and you can't say the same about every other guy.
Right.
And wouldn't you just, Mark, I mean, and as we're talking, and I think the reason why these two apostles are elevated in that category of doctrine and theologian is because they are both so Christologically sound. So it's not just doctrine. I think it's really more centered on Christology.
Yes.
And especially if as I'm like to do, pull Hebrews into the Pauline corpus. I think that's why the church has revered them in this way, because the Christology is so rich, so full, so clear, so elevated, that really everything else that's talked about Christology is subsumed in these two guys.
Yeah.
Would you say, am I off base?
No, I think you're spot on. And something I wanted to add to that is the fact that the collect does not draw a sharp distinction between the gospel and doctrine. And in our day and age, I hear this all the time.
Is that right?
I mean,
don't get too doctrine heavy.
Yeah, don't get too doctrine heavy.
You
know, I'm all about the gospel. I'm not really about doctrine. It's like, well, I don't think you understand the gospel then, because that is holy doctrine.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
The doctrine itself is good news. It's healthy teaching.
Yeah, they're not separate categories.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So the collect pulls those things together.
Yeah.
And,
I hadn't thought of that. That's right.
Well, you just got yourself 2 more weeks on the podcast.
All right. Thank you.
Very good, Father.
Well, and I know we're going on and on about the collect, well, because it's Paul and it's great. But I do think in this idea of doctrine and Christology, I think because John and Paul, their main paradigm for all theology is incarnation. It's not soteriology. It's not eschatology.
Yeah.
It's not liturgics. Everything flows from the incarnation.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the right way to do it. I think if the incarnation is your main paradigm and frame for all of theology, I think it works better.
You're in a good spot.
Yeah. Do you agree?
No, yeah, I absolutely agree.
You don't have any pushback on that?
Well, I mean, I will say when you think about, the theology of justification,
right?
Almost everybody is going to go to St. Paul, right?
Yeah, but my point would be that justification is understood in light of the incarnation.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, that was great. Enough of that. Enough of the collect. Okay. So hopefully we've drawn out some of the big themes.
Yeah.
Hopefully you picked up some in that conversation. So let's look at the epistle. And for the epistle, as you would imagine, it comes from Acts chapter 9 on this conversion of St. Paul. And I'd like John to read the epistle for us, if you would, John.
All right. So Acts chapter 9 begins like this. It says, "And Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord, went unto the high priest and desired of him letters to Damascus, to the synagogues, that if he found any of this way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. And as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined round about him a light from heaven, and he fell to the earth, and heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And he said, Who art thou, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest. It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. And he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? And the Lord said unto him, Arise, and go into the city, and it shall be told thee what thou must do. And the men which journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no man. And Saul arose from the earth, And when his eyes were opened, he saw no man, but they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. And he was 3 days without sight, and neither did eat nor drink. And there was a certain disciple at Damascus named Ananias, and to him said the Lord in a vision, Ananias. And he said, Behold, I am here, Lord. And the Lord said unto him, Arise and go into the street, which is called Straight, and inquire in the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus. For behold, he prayeth, and hath seen in a vision a man named Ananias coming in, and putting his hand on him, that he might receive his sight. Then Ananias answered, Lord, I have heard by many of this man how much evil he hath done to thy saints at Jerusalem. And here he hath authority from the chief priest to bind all that call on thy name. But the Lord said unto him, Go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me, to bear my name before the Gentiles, and kings, and the children of Israel. For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake. And Ananias went his way, and entered into the house, and putting his hands on him, said, Brother Saul, the Lord, even Jesus, that appeared unto thee in the way as thou camest, hath sent me, that thou mightest receive thy sight, and be filled with the Holy Ghost. And immediately there fell from his eyes as it had been scales, and he received sight forthwith, and arose, and was baptized. And when he had received meat, he was strengthened. Then was Saul certain days with the disciples which were at Damascus, and straightway he preached Christ in the synagogues, and that he is the Son of God. But all that heard him were amazed, and said, Is not this he that destroyed them, which called on this name in Jerusalem, and came hither for that intent, that he might bring them bound unto the chief priests? But Saul increased the more in strength, and confounded the Jews which dwelt at Damascus, proving that this is very Christ.
Wow. I love this passage.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear the Isaianic overtones twice, with God, the Lord calling to Saul, and the Lord calling to Ananias in the response. There's sacramental, there's sacraments going on. He was baptized, but there's sacramental imagery. There's a spiritual imagery of the Christian life that we could pull from this. But I wanted to go to our Pauline scholar, Mark, and we could spend a lot of time here. It's a huge passage, but just a few things. I mean, maybe what is this really framing for us? What's the point on this feast day? And just what do you draw out of this?
Well, there's the imagery of light for one thing.
Yeah.
The light that is going to shine through, in this case, through the hard heart of a man, which shows us that no one is beyond the reach of the true and living God.
Yeah, from heaven.
From heaven.
Right.
We also see in this, in the conversion, we see that there is both a descent and ascent. So he goes down. I think the imagery here is intentional, right? It's not just that he was knocked down, but he went down to the ground, down to the earth, and then he's brought up again.
Yeah.
And so he is, in his own life, dramatizing the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus as the light of Christ shines into him.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting also that he goes into this as a man who thought his eyes were wide open. He could see the world as it is, and he knew the truth about Jesus and what a danger he was, to now he doesn't see. And it's in his blindness that he comes to see the truth. And I think many people we've known, maybe as we talk about our own coming to faith, would identify with some of this in various ways, some more intensely than others. But it's just the work of Christ in his life that's so beautiful to see. And that's what he's going to do to the nations, or for the nations.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I spot on stuff from Father Mark. I'd like to piggyback off of his theme of death, because I think that's evident there as well. This idea of being stricken blind for 3 days and in bed.
3 days. Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely got that Easter motif going, to where it's going. Jesus brought him low, and now Jesus is going to send somebody to give him sight and restore him. And as we see, he's going to arise and be baptized.
That's right.
And so you have this connection of death and new life.
Yeah, and the scales falling off are almost like the
Yes.
stone being rolled away.
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Well, we see that, in a sense, Ananias embodies what will become the full apostolic ministry, right? Where they're going to the blind
Mm.
and they're laying hands.
The
Yeah.
blind
Yeah.
will receive their sight.
Yeah.
Well, right. I mean, that's what Jesus said.
Yeah.
So they're laying hands on him and they're baptizing, and he comes to faith. I mean, he was immediately baptized.
Mhm.
Yep.
And what's so wonderful is, what does he do immediately after he's baptized?
He receives meat and is
He eats.
strengthened.
So here we've
Right.
seen how the sacramental life,
Absolutely.
beginning of baptism and then communion.
Yep.
All these beautiful things. What about you, John?
Every time I read this passage, I'm struck with just the simple truth. Jesus changes people.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what he does.
That's
He
good.
changes people. He ends the old man and starts the new man.
Yeah.
And this is brought forth so graphically. I love the detail of St. Luke here when he's really given us all the things that happen. There's nothing to guess here. It's all right there, which tells me that there's a lot of meat on the bone there. But Jesus changes people. The other thing I noticed also is that this thing with Ananias reminds me of Abram, where God told Abram, listen, go somewhere, go to a certain place and
Right.
find out.
Go to
Yeah.
Straight
Yeah.
Street and I'll
Right.
tell you what to do.
Yeah. And so I thought that was an interesting tie-in. Paul being a Jew, I wonder sometimes if he may have thought, am I another Abram? What's going on here? I mean, this is a remarkable,
Yeah.
try to put yourself in the shoes of this man
Well,
on this road. It's
And
remarkable.
speaking of that, I mean, Luke doesn't say how he got to Ananias' house.
Right.
That's right.
So Ananias is a Christian. I think some of the commentaries speak about Ananias possibly being one of the 70. Somehow Paul is taken in the state that he's in, frightened, anxious, bewildered, blind, and he ends up in this Christian's home
Right.
in Damascus. And so we see the picture of Christian hospitality and the sacrificial willingness to help others, to help even the outsiders, because he knew who this man was, Paul. So I just think it's a beautiful little picture of Ananias as well, of the openness of Christianity, the openness of the Christian to bring in those who are outside,
Mhm.
but yet God is placing them before him and puts them in his home.
Mm.
Did you have anything else, Father Templin, that you wanted to bring out of this?
Yeah. I was thinking, there's a line that has just always stuck with me, and we see this so evident. Now, today we're celebrating Paul's conversion,
Mm-hmm.
but when we read Paul's his writings are so marked with suffering, and he
Yeah.
talks about that all the time, and we have Jesus here saying, I'm going to show him how many things he must suffer for me.
Mhm.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right. Yeah.
And
Cruciform life,
yes, absolutely.
which, what a testament to the true power of the gospel, because they threw everything in the book at the guy. I mean,
Yeah.
everything they could do to the guy.
Mhm.
Not only man, not only his kindred, but nature.
Mhm.
I mean,
Shipwreck.
shipwrecks,
Yep.
out in the sea,
yeah.
starved,
Serpents.
cold,
Mhm.
snakes.
Mhm.
And yet,
Whippings.
yet what God instilled in that man, what Christ gave that man, the gift of new life, he persevered.
Mhm.
Right.
And just one thing I wanted to throw, and maybe you can comment or not, but one of the things that I saw recently, and as I read this before, is the mercy of God.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, God was in his right. I mean, God could have knocked him off the horse and killed him
Mhm.
for his complicitness in the stoning of Stephen. He was an enemy of God. But God didn't do that. And I think Paul will bring this up, the mercy of God, time and time again in his epistles, because he really, really understands what it means to receive mercy and to be forgiven.
Mhm.
Right.
And I think the humility, there's a strong theme of humility in this conversion
Mhm.
that I think sometimes I've overlooked. But so much about being humbled, and then you think, well, that's why God did so much with that man,
Mhm.
and that's why God humbled him. And
Mhm.
imagine being who you are, and now they take you blind to some Christian's house.
Right.
He's like, why didn't you take me to the synagogue?
Mhm.
I mean, imagine being at the mercy of those that you're trying to persecute.
Into the lion's den,
And now
as it were. Right?
they're going to help you, and now they're going to feed you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how much more humble could the man be? I mean, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that he goes, he's at a house on Straight Street.
Right.
So he's had this errant path. He's been, in crooked ways, doing much evil.
Yeah.
Finds himself on Straight Street. So he has a new way to go. You also see, and you guys have alluded to this, but you see the connection between hospitality and mission. The two go hand in hand. As Ananias extends the hospitality of the church to show love to this stranger and brings him in. And I do think we see here, not to flatter anyone, but we do see the real sense of belong, believe, become unfolding in
I hadn't thought about
in
that.
his
That's
conversion.
Right. Yep.
And there is no better way. He's brought in. You belong to us. You belong to Jesus now. So now you belong to us.
Yeah.
And then you start to see the real change take place in his life.
Yeah. That's a good point.
One note, this idea of laying on of hands. Jesus mentions it, and then, Luke brings it up that it comes to pass.
Yeah.
And, I just find that interesting, coming from my past, that wasn't a big deal. But right here in this miracle, I mean, he could have just prayed for him, right?
Right.
Sure.
Or Jesus could have just, as soon as he walked in the house,
Knocked off the scales.
Yes. But no, he had him lay hands on him.
Right.
Right.
So even at the very nascent beginning of Paul's gospel, he's not even baptized yet. He already is learning that mission is incarnational.
Right.
It's tactile. It's not abstract. It's not information. It's redeemed humanity pressing into the flesh of the lost.
Yeah, and you've got that language earlier as well. Led him by the hand as well. There's this.
That's right.
That humanity there in the text.
Man, that's good.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, Saul is like a child.
Right.
Well, and he'll speak of that,
Yeah.
right? He'll speak of that in his epistle.
He says also, you mentioned the mercy of God. One of the things that strikes me is when Paul reflects back on his conversion in writing to Timothy. He talks
Timothy.
about his previous life being violent, persecuting the church, all of that. But then he talks about the unlimited patience of God with him. And when he writes to the Galatians, he says that he was actually set apart from birth, from his mother's womb for apostolic ministry. And you think of the patience of God, here's a man in his 40s
Right.
who has been wrecking shop all of, these past few years. And God in his patience at just the right time says, all right, that's enough. Enough is enough.
Yeah.
So
That's a good word.
It reminds me also of, I go back and think about the 12, the apostles. Jesus always has a way of using the unexpected.
Yeah.
Why would he choose that guy? I think of Zacchaeus. Jesus was always reaching out to the least of these.
Yeah.
And of all the people we would expect the Lord to call to bring the gospel to the Gentiles, Saul of Tarsus, and even Ananias.
Right.
Here says, wait a minute now.
Yeah, well done.
Saul of
we talking about the
Tarsus.
same guy here?
This guy's been butchering us. He's been, it reminds me of Javert in Les Miserables. He's obsessed with chasing down, and he has shown mercy.
Yeah.
And so I thought of that a lot, of Jesus always kind of like pulls the rug out from under our expectations. Says, no, I have the sovereignty to do what I will do.
Yeah.
And this man is my chosen vessel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well, and I was going to say, just going with that, the gifts that the Lord had given to Paul were real gifts, right? I mean, he could preach,
Right.
He could teach. He understood the law probably just as good as any of his contemporaries.
right. And then that wasn't like God just like zapped it into him. No,
Right.
God, he had been training.
He had been trained.
He had been schooled by Gamaliel. He was a competent man in his own sphere. God
Yes.
took that.
And
used it for
now
his
he's
good.
using it
That's right.
for the church.
That's right. So nothing's wasted.
Right.
And God can take all of your history, all your preoccupations, your occupations, all your experiences, and he can use those things for himself.
The
Right.
zeal
That's right.
and turn it around and use it for the gospel.
That's
Right.
right. He can redirect imperfect love and turn it towards godly love. He can use the broken things in us, and he can actually put them to good use.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Saul of Tarsus was a man of great determination all his life.
Had to be.
Christ took that determination, that gifting of his personality, and turned it now to the way.
Yeah.
And
But he had
Paul
to
used
humble
those
him first,
gifts.
John. He
That's
had to
right.
humble him,
Right.
That's
And
right.
he has
Yeah,
to
I'm
do that
gonna-
with all of us.
I'm going to go
Absolutely.
on journeys to persecute the church.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I'm going to go on journeys to preach the gospel.
To preach the gospel and
right.
build the church.
And
Right.
be persecuted for the church.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
One note here, I hadn't thought of it until just now in the reading. It's interesting. This is Epiphany, and we've talked about the kings or the wise men coming and worshiping Jesus, and you have the Jewish king rejecting him. And now this man who's been called by God is going to go to the kings and
Yes.
preach to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the kings are just going to be wandering around going, I guess we should look for Jesus. No, God is deliberate and intentional to send a messenger to them.
God's going after them
God's going after them.
through Paul.
And you mentioned the themes from Isaiah. I mean, there's so many here. Arise, and then the light is shining,
Right.
and you're going out to the kings, bringing the gospel to the nations.
Kings shall come to thy light.
Yeah,
That's right.
really beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, let's cut this short because we got to move on.
Well, we can't move on yet.
Okay, let's not move on,
One more note,
please.
specifically tied in with the collect, but
Okay.
where does our epistle lesson leave us? It leaves us with him preaching to the Jews
That's right.
the gospel,
That's right.
In the
And
synagogue,
proving
right?
Proving that
proving
Jesus-
that he is the Messiah,
Messiah.
and the Son
That's
of
right.
God.
That's right.
Yeah.
So his
Yeah.
doctrine and apologetic, right? So he's doing exactly what the collect was saying. And it's interesting that Jesus, in a sense, fulfills what he said, I've come for the house of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Because he comes to Paul,
Right.
who he calls by his Hebrew name, Saul. And Saul immediately goes to the Israelites,
Yep.
Right.
even though God will redirect him.
Right.
So even that statement by Jesus is fulfilled in Paul's ministry from the very get-go.
Well, and this is going to be his pattern that we see in the book of Acts, where he goes to the Jew first, to the synagogue 1st, and then to the Gentiles.
That's right.
Because just like Paul is immediately able to preach, that's because he understands the law. He
That's right.
understands the scriptures.
He's a Hebrew of Hebrews.
He understands the prophecy. What he was missing was that the Messiah was already here.
Right.
And now that he knows that, he's able to utilize that gift. And so you take the gospel in his context first to those who have already received the law. They understand the scripture. Or they have an understanding
It's
of the
low-hanging
scripture.
fruit.
Yes,
Yeah.
Should be.
absolutely.
And that's
Well-
why Paul will say to the Jew first and then to the Gentile.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think we just have to say the quiet part out loud for maybe some of our listeners. But what we see in the ministry of the Apostle Paul is he's preaching one gospel to all people, whether Jew or Gentile.
Mhm.
So it's not like there is a way of salvation for the Jewish people and then a way of salvation for Gentile people. There is the
John
way of
Hagee is
salvation in Jesus Christ. And that needs to be said because so many people have gotten off track with that these days.
Amen.
Good news isn't plural,
Good news is,
Good news is
right?
There is one good news.
Gospels.
One
Right.
faith,
Yeah, one faith.
one baptism,
baptism.
one
One
Christ.
God and Father
Yeah.
involved.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that is the final note on that. I will put my foot down.
One more. No.
All right, so let's move on. This is a rather short gospel, but the gospel then for this conversion of St. Paul is from St. Matthew, and that is chapter 14, beginning in 27th verse. Father Templin, please.
19.
19.
Peter answered and said unto Jesus, Behold, we have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have thereof, or therefore? And Jesus said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit on his throne in his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And every one that hath forsaken houses, or brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands, for my name's sake, shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit everlasting life. But many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first.
Thank you. Now, John, typically the propers are, generally speaking, the epistle is going to give us more of what we might say nowadays, the application, right? There's more exhortation, instruction, and they're typically giving us the application for the gospel. The gospel is giving us the big idea, the narrative of Jesus, its story. This feast day, though, actually, it's reversed, because really what we see is the story in the epistle, but the understanding and the application of what we might want to think about in the story of Paul's conversion actually is given to us by Jesus's teaching.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. You're right.
So just in light of that, or maybe something else, but what are some of your thoughts on this gospel for this particular feast?
Well, I think that, first of all, we see Paul, just like the disciples, is going to forsake all for Christ.
Yes.
I mean, that they've tied that back in. He's going to do the same thing, only he's going to have a bigger mission field. He's going to say, you're going to the Gentiles. And so we see him being tied in to what has become the church.
Right.
And he's going to forsake all. And certainly as we read through the New Testament, boy, howdy, we see him doing just that. I also note the promise of the heavenly treasure.
Yeah, I saw that too. I was making that connection.
Paul, he'll say things to us like, gain to me is lost for Christ. And the things that I lost for Christ are as dung. That's one of my favorite descriptions. How much more descriptive can St. Paul be?
Yeah, I press on for that which I have not obtained.
Absolutely. That I may win Christ. So again, we talked about, the determination of his personality. He's a focused guy.
Yeah.
And he uses these athletic metaphors about running races. He's chasing after one prize. That is Christ. That is the singular focus of his life from that moment of his conversion.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and I think you're exactly right. He has such a strong eternal focus. Like, he knows where the prize is, and it's not in this life.
Right.
And I think that's why he lived the way he lived. He was willing to die.
Yeah.
Because he knew the prize awaited. Jesus says, that in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit on the throne of his glory, you shall sit upon 12 thrones. Well, that's eternal reward.
Right.
So I think Paul had that very, very clear in his eschatology and his understanding of the spiritual race and the fight. Mark, what about you?
I've been perplexed by this idea of the regeneration for many years. In my transfer exam into the REC, I had a wonderful conversation with some priests about regeneration. And it was interesting how we all talked about how typically in American evangelicalism, regeneration has to do with one person being born again, having some sort of conversion experience.
Right.
This gets back to what you guys were talking about earlier with the cosmic scope of the gospel.
Yes.
In the regeneration, the renewal of the world,
everything.
The heavens, earth,
of creation,
the whole thing. And so this just shows that from the teachings of Christ into the teachings of St. Paul, there's a real connection and echo. And you can see how, as you guys have said, eschatology shaped his life. And it wasn't just getting a chart out, but it was the promise of this ultimate renewal of all things.
Yeah.
And then his place, his reward within that context.
His sure hope.
Yeah, it's amazing.
What about you?
Yeah, and just following back in the gospel, this idea of judging the 12 tribes of Israel. St. Paul, before he's talked about in his epistles. I mean, he's the Hebrew of Hebrews, right? If anybody should be able to glory,
it's me.
In all of that, it's me.
Yeah,
but that's not. He's not being boastful. He's being honest.
He's being honest. I mean, who else was going across country to go round up people?
Well, right.
Because they were so zealous for the law.
Highest trained.
Yes.
Right. According to the law, faultless.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, he's not making that up. I mean, he's saying, look, I'm the guy. I mean, if anybody should get it, it's me.
Right. But in reality, as Jesus is telling us here in the Gospel of Matthew, the true Israel, whether Jew or Greek or slave or free, as we're going to see later on in Galatians, are those who are in Christ Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
By faith.
The very Christ,
right.
The Son of God.
Right.
Yeah.
And this idea of our election in Jesus.
Yeah. In which Paul will say the church, he calls Israel the church.
Yes.
Right. The church of Israel. He speaks of Israelites by faith, right? Faith in Christ. I mean, all those things are here circling around, right? And that whole judging of Israel, et cetera, et cetera. But the true Israelite is the one who lives by faith.
Yes.
I mean, Paul says that.
Yes. And, you see this language elsewhere, as, I brought up before in Paul's writings, but this idea of judging even the angels and all of this sort of stuff, there's this, to go back with what you said earlier, Father, this cosmic participation in the reign of Jesus and the regeneration. So it's not, we're not just walking around here and there. Hopefully some of that's going on, some fun stuff in the new heavens and earth, but there's this reigning with Christ.
Right.
Yes.
That's going on. There's this judgment of all things, judging the tribes of Israel, judging the angels. It's this participatory thing that's happening.
Yeah. And it's not like this, the common understanding, oh, you don't judge me. You know what I mean? Don't judge. And it's like, was that Nacho Libre? Yeah. Why are you judging me?
Why are you judging
Judge
me?
not, lest ye be judged.
But I think Paul is what the hope is that a man like me, Paul, a sinful man, one day will be made right to where I am rightfully able with Christ to institute and be a part of righteousness, doing what's right, the things that weren't done right before in the creation. So it's not this sense of like critiquing or looking down on, we're going to judge you. No, it's about being a part of the righteousness of Christ, where in the end, the right thing gets done.
Right. We're fully infused, if you will, with the justice of God.
That's right. And you're acting wholly just.
Right.
Which we never do this side of eternity.
In a real sense, Paul was on the wrong side of history prior to Christ converting him.
Yeah.
And not only was he on the wrong side of history, but he had elevated himself to the position of judge going out. And that's why he was, arresting people, persecuting, giving approval to their death. So he was judging incorrectly.
That's right.
And what he's talking about, as you echo we look at the epistle reading, the gospel reading with Jesus, is there will be a right judgment, a righteous judgment.
Right. Yeah.
And that's another part of the conversion that takes place, maybe not just in that moment, but over the scope of his life.
Well, and he was wrongly judging as one who judged himself. He was under God's judgment.
Yes.
And God showed mercy on him.
Yeah.
So you got somebody under judgment.
Right. He stood on
judging.
and approved as Stephen was stoned.
That's right.
And Stephen sees Jesus open heaven for him.
and talk about being on the wrong side of history.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was on the wrong team that day.
He was.
Yeah.
And look what God did.
Right. And as Stephen has that Christophany and sees the Lord in his glory sitting on the right hand or standing on the right hand of God, Paul receives a similar vision that corrects his entire ministry.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, which is a beautiful point that you have to lift your eyes if you truly want to be oriented to righteousness.
Right.
Yeah.
When Paul says, "Who art thou?" I am Jesus,
Right.
whom thou hast persecuted. I mean, I can't get my mind around that.
Well, of all the things Jesus could have said, well, let me introduce myself.
Right.
So you see everything that you can see here, the horse you were on, I made that.
Yeah. Right.
But that's not what he says.
Right.
He says, I am the what? The Lord,
The Lord.
Jesus, whom you are persecuting.
Yeah.
He gets right to the point.
When he needed the eyes of his heart open to use
the eyes of my heart, Lord.
but to use a classic song, but to use Paul's language elsewhere, because he didn't see the Lord standing in glory.
No.
When Stephen was being stoned and he was approving
Right.
of that, but
No, he was
transformative.
like the men who were with him who heard a voice but did not
They didn't
see.
know what it was.
Yes,
And he could relate back to that. To
And
that
speaking
moment
of
with
that,
Stephen.
and in the epistle, I love the fact because there's a play on words in the epistle because the Lord speaks to Paul and he's like, "Who are you?"
Right.
And then the Lord speaks to Ananias and he's like, "Yes, Lord." He knows him,
Right.
Right.
And I love that as part of that story. So let me just look at this. Let's take a look at the very ending of this. And Jesus says, "And everyone that hath forsaken houses or brethren or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or lands for my name's sake shall receive 100-fold and shall inherit everlasting life." Just stopping there, when we think about sometimes our visceral reaction to the forsaken language of Jesus, forsaking this, hate your mother and father, we're immediately putting into like, well, why would he want me to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And we put it into a negative category first.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you find that sometimes to be the case in just the Christian's reaction to this idea
Yeah, I mean,
of forsaking?
Yeah, it's been my reaction from time to time. And I was going to say this passage in particular has weighed on me over the course of my Christian life, but especially over the course of my ministry, because we find ourselves in moments having to make hard decisions, costly decisions, decisions that might end relationships, friendships, that might disrupt family, that might be very costly personally. And I was going to say, it's one thing to look at Paul's life and say, oh, he suffered so much. Jesus said, I'm going to show him how much he must suffer.
Show him.
And then we're like, yeah, he suffered quite a bit. And then we move on. But Jesus says, no, if you're going to follow me, this is all about the cross-shaped life.
Yes.
Right.
And this is something I need to be reminded of again and again. Like it is costly to follow Jesus. It will hurt. There will be some losses, some pain and tears shed. It's all a part of this light breaking into darkness. Yeah. It can be a very, very painful transformation.
John, what about you? You got something?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think that it is easy for us, like Father Mark was just talking about, it's easy for us to separate ourselves in our modern era. Well, you know, we live in America, or we have everything we could ever want. And so our suffering is, you know, probably not going to be like this. But at times, especially if you're actively following Christ, I often think of the metaphor of swimming upstream in a river. You know, the culture sits in an inner tube and just goes with the flow, but the Christian life is swimming upstream. It's hard. Yeah. It's supposed to be hard. And when we think of the Via Dolorosa, we can kind of connect with that idea. Look, if you're going to follow Christ, just like the gospel tells us, it's going to be tough. Expect it, but I'm with you always.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good word. I'm going to come to you as we start landing the plane.
Yeah, I just think back to Philippians 2 and this whole idea of kenosis, right? Being emptied out. And, you know, Paul uses the example of Jesus, but we see this darn near perfect following of that same idea of kenosis being emptied out for the sake of Christ and the ministry of Paul.
I'm being poured out. He says.
Yes, he uses that elsewhere as
priestly language.
Yes, and so it's no. We shouldn't be surprised when the church selects this gospel lesson, because Paul did all of that. Yeah. And he's receiving the things that he lost 100-fold in the regeneration. And is painful, and trying, and I mean, you know, there's times where Paul says, "Man, I'd be happy just to die right now and to be with Christ." Right? I mean, you only feel that way if you're truly suffering. Yeah. And yet, the church reminds us of Christ's word that it's worth it.
Yeah.
Well, and to your point, we see fulfillment of this immediately in Paul's life.
Yes.
When Ananias shows up, that's the first fruits, if you will, of getting a new family. Yeah. Of getting new parents. And
what you left behind, God replaces.
Yeah. And what's the language that Ananias uses? Brother Saul.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Already a brother.
That's he's
gained a brother.
I never thought about that.
You're not alone.
That's true.
Well, I'm going to go to you, Father Templin, just maybe comment on this last, of course, this very famous line. Jesus says, "But many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first."
I don't know. I'll leave it quickly here. There's this echo on Paul's writing of this one untimely born. And, you know, he didn't have the chance to walk with Jesus during his ministry. But when given the chance and the corrective to change his way, he followed Jesus like nobody else we've ever seen. And so I see his life just fulfilling that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to last comments. Father Toombs, you get one shot.
One shot. I don't think I have any today.
Thank God.
Thank you.
Thank the Lord.
Wow.
Father Templin, I'm going to go back to you.
I'll be like Deacon and come back in a couple
Yeah,
minutes. Oh, wait,
yeah.
well, there is this one thing I
Yeah,
want to say.
you'll notice, by the way, there's a lot more talking on this podcast without Deacon here, and probably not as poignant of points being made. But go ahead, Father Michael, last thought.
Be like Paul.
Be like Paul.
Imitate Paul as he imitates
Follow
Christ.
me as I follow
Yep.
Christ.
That's one of my favorite scriptures, by the way.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, John, last word. And thank you again, John, for being here.
Yeah, thank you, John.
What a
It's
blessing.
been, I can't even describe how great this is. Thank you guys for welcoming me in brotherhood. I go to this last line of the gospel here in the prayer book, talks about the last shall be first. Paul talks a lot in his writings, this image of running a race. This athletic idea. You know, I've heard a lot of commentators say, well, Paul must have been an athletic fellow because he talks about he probably was a runner, you know, maybe a way he dealt with stress in his life or what
about
have you.
6'3", 220.
And he certainly ran to persecute. No
yeah.
question about that. He was eager for that. But as I think of a runner, you know, the truly great competitive runners are running for that tape because they're chasing the prize.
Yeah.
Paul was no different, but he was not trying to win for himself.
Yeah.
Right.
He was trying to win for Christ. For me to win is Christ. And I think the way Jesus talks about this in Matthew, Paul lived out that. You know, he's running to snap that tape, but he's snapping it for Christ, and he's carrying with him, like a relay runner, he's carrying the gospel to the nations, running that race. And I love how Paul's brings in that kind of that race running idea that we can connect to, whether we're runners or not. Certainly as men, you know, with that kind of competitive thing we have with sports and stuff, it just reminds me he's running for a prize far better than anything he could earn himself. He's running to win Christ and then to take that prize to the nations and pouring out his very life to do it.
Well, not bad.
And he hands off that baton too, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
You see it
I
in
mean,
Timothy.
this idea of apostolic success
Yes.
and preparing the next group of men to take the gospel.
Laying on hands.
Which really should give us a little bit of a different understanding of preparing men for holy orders. Because we're not just filling them with content.
Right.
I guarantee you the things that Paul taught Timothy were far beyond just systematics.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I can testify, and I know that Deacon Timothy has talked about this, you know, after he was ordained. What did he talk about? I felt the weight
Yes.
of the office when those hands, and he described that to me. I said, what's your impression? You know, right after he'd been ordained 15 minutes, and I went up to him, gave him a big hug, and he says, boy, let me tell you, you really feel the weight. And I'll always remember, because the look on his face, it was a very real. He was feeling the weight of the office, and he's like, all right, let's go.
It's
Let's roll.
sobering,
Yes.
you know, and in a scary way.
Yeah.
And I remember that same feeling. It's like, you know, I thought I was going to be more excited, you
Right.
know, after this is over, and then reality hits. And it's like,
Yes.
I'm gonna hide.
this is real.
Right.
And then the Lord came down to the garden and said, "Where are you?"
Where art thou?
And you know, and I'll tell you, as a postulant, I think about that all the time, and it really adds a whole new dimension to preparation. Because you're right, it's more than seminary study.
No.
It's more than filling your mind with knowledge that's important. Where you know, and yet there's something so much deeper. And so
I would say
I love that.
I would say that the proper preparation for any man entering into holy orders is learning to bear the cross.
Yeah.
I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But let's pray. O God, who through the preaching of the blessed apostle St. Paul has caused the light of the gospel to shine throughout the world, grant, we beseech thee, that we, having his wonderful conversion and remembrance, may show forth our thankfulness unto thee for the same, by following the holy doctrine which he taught, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Well, we thank you for joining the Everyday Monks. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. We certainly did. And we look forward to seeing you next time on the Everyday Monks, the parish podcast of St. Benedict's Anglican Church.